Chapter 3, Serving Linguistic and Culturally Diverse Groups. And this chapter is probably the hardest chapter for me to teach on just because I think we've so overdone this in our schools. And Dr. Rojas Cortez really leads the charge here. In fact, she's going to insinuate here that it's your responsibility to teach kids about their cultural background, and I couldn't disagree more. And you'll pick up some of my attitude in the chapter, and I apologize for that. This is important, but I think we've so overdone it. So I hope this chapter has some useful information in you, and I know you're going to work in schools that have some very diverse students' backgrounds and diverse origin of different students. So I hope this is helpful. Chapter 3, Culturally Diverse Backgrounds. Chapter 3, Working with Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Groups. And as I was saying, this is a pretty touchy subject. This is one that I obviously have some feelings about, and I'm going to invite you several times through this lecture to push back on me on some of my attitudes about this. I've been asked why I would choose a textbook that I disagree with the author. How else, as a professor, can I address these issues other than selecting a textbook that has some, what I would call some very divisive things in it, very divisive points of view from Miss Rojas Cortez here. So here she starts out with a quote here, addressing issues that arise as a result of increased diversity demands both insight and care rather than arrogance and simplistic notions of unity. I start right off and telling you I don't know what that means, where that's coming from, this arrogance and simplistic notions of unity. Why is that part of this discussion? I don't understand that. Okay, so that's kind of where it's coming from, and this chapter is just full of divisive things like this, I think. But let's just take a look at it. First of all, it starts off telling a story here about her daughter, Miss Cortez, and I believe it's Dr. Rojas Cortez, and she writes this: "My daughter has been exploring her own ethnic identity. She has heard the term Chicana and has been trying to figure out who can be identified as Chicana or Chicano. If you never heard of the term, it is identified as a person who has a Mexican ancestry, and she has told you in first chapter that she is of Mexican descent and born and raised in Mexico." And it goes on to say, "My daughter says that her skin is not white, fair like her brother's, who says she looks like he's from Europe because of the fair color of his skin." See, and it's very interesting that her daughter is figuring out that her skin is darker than her brother's. "My daughter, like many children, often looks at the physical features of a person, but in the process, her understanding of ethnic identity, she realized that this is more complex than just the color of someone's skin. Although teachers very often tend to think that all children are the same, it is important to note that all children are the same, or not all children. Note that not all children are the same, and their experiences are as varied as the color of their skin." Now, again, I'm going to say to you, class, this is not profound stuff, that they're not all the same. So again, I'm not sure how this plays in here. So she goes on and says, "Why it's important for teachers to know how to explain issues of identity to children. Throughout this chapter, you will see that importance is based on the ability of teachers to offer quality experiences for all children and their families in school, particularly those who have been marginalized." Okay, she uses this word here, marginalized. Who have been marginalized. Okay, I don't quite get that as part of this discussion. Who is marginalizing children? Throughout this chapter, you'll see that the importance is based on the ability of teachers to offer quality experience to their children and their families, particularly those who have been marginalized because of their cultural and linguistic background. Okay, I'm telling you, folks, as our teachers, I don't want you going here. I don't want you deciding who's been marginalized and who to seek out here. Knowing the children's identity will help teachers determine how to best meet the children's and families' needs in a supportive, nurturing environment where children feel safe because the teacher considers the color of their skin, language, national origin, and ethnicity. While reading this chapter, it will be important to keep in mind the funds of knowledge, which we studied in the first chapter. And I get that. I agree with that. But again, do we not able to provide a supportive and nurturing environment where children feel safe without delving into this of what their cultural identity is? I disagree. I think kids will care more about how much you care than if you understand their identity. Okay. Again, she has stated real clearly that she's an activist, and she's wasting no time here, getting into this again in chapter 3. So that's what identity is. This is her thing with identity, and now she tries to distinguish the difference between culture and diversity. And she goes through this. Diversity is difference in characteristics, qualities, traits, values, beliefs, mannerisms, and self and others based on predetermined factors. Okay, predetermined meaning that you don't have any control over them. And culture is learned, and that's a key word in here. Culture is learned. The learned and shared values, a system of beliefs and attitudes of a controlled mechanism that shape our behavior. Okay, and again, she brings this in my opinion, in a very activist way. Knowing the difference between the two terms can help teachers better understand the diversity of the students they teach in their families. Okay, one is things that they've learned, one is things that they were born with. Okay, again, not sure how this is going to help you serve them. And she goes again, culture is the most easily most easily understood when viewed as the way of life. Okay, culture and way of life go together. All right, I think that's one of the ones on the test, so be aware of that. Other descriptions are blueprints for living, etc. Let me flip the page here. Okay, it's important for teachers of young children to understand the concept of culture because we're not only shaping the children to develop physically, socially, linguistically, and cognitively, okay, again, but we are also helping them develop culturally. Now again, class, I disagree. It is not your job as a teacher of my children to help my children develop culturally. Come on, we're killing you now because our kids aren't doing well enough to read and write and count and spell. But now you got to develop our children culturally? This drives me crazy. How do we assist our culturally and linguistic diverse children in an effort to make school relevant for them? Fisher suggests the challenge of cultural analysis develop a translation of mediation tools to help make visible the difference of interests, access, powers, needs, desires, and physical perspectives. This is particularly important because culture also includes the way in which life is perceived, and because this can be a stereotype. See, again, I'm telling you folks, this is such an agenda-driven attitude of things, is that she's out to right the wrongs here. And I don't think that's your job. I don't think you want to get messed up with this in the school. And yet this is what she's saying, that you have to do this to serve the children. And I disagree. So then it goes into what educators should focus on. And these free approaches: focus on yourself, focus on the cultural and linguistic diverse children, and focus on collaboration with parents and community and acceptance of others. And again, who's not accepting? I don't get this constant attitude that we're not accepting. None of you got in this business of teaching to not accept the children for who they are. And yet this is what she's giving you a lesson and suggesting to you you're not accepting. And I'm going to come back to this in a second here. So cultural identity, who am I? Now get this. This again to me is so what I'm talking about. Go with this on me. I really don't have a culture. I'm just a simple American. I was born here and my parents are from here. I heard my grandmother's parents came from France, but I never really thought about it. My last name is Morales, but I am not Hispanic. I was born in Louisiana. I don't speak Spanish. Okay, this is her thing. This quote represents a student's understanding of her identity. Note that the student is not prejudiced towards Hispanics or people who speak Spanish. Spanish. In fact, in the same conversation, the student talked about how she wished she spoke Spanish, yet her understanding of the Hispanic culture and her own was limited. Interesting, she shared that she was from Louisiana, therefore couldn't be Hispanic. I asked her if she knew the history of Louisiana, which includes Spanish and French influence. The student said that she had never thought about it. She always thought that the Hispanic people came from Mexico. This conversation prompted her to begin looking at her own ancestry and thus her own identity. Again, folks, I'm going to ask you to leave this conversation to the parents. I'm not sure it's your job as a teacher to explain cultural identity to kids and tell them how important it is. This little girl wants to be just from America, just wants to be plain American. Dr. Rojas Cortez here is saying that's not good enough, that you have to know their identity and you have to start this conversation. Okay? That's an activist attitude that I think you will find all kinds of sticky things to step in here. At least as far as teaching my children, leave this alone. This is not your job. You can serve these kids and love them and teach them and encourage them and bring them along without delving into what their cultural identity is. She's saying they can't function unless they understand their cultural identity. Identity is defined as knowing who we are and what groups we belong to. Now again, please tell me I'm wrong on this, but to me that's a very divisive approach. Again, defined as knowing who we are and what groups we belong to. Knowing who we are very often helps us understand who others are. It's particularly important for teachers who work with diverse learners. However, since the majority of teachers in schools are white, it may be difficult for them to see and understand other people's children. Why would we think that? I disagree. You will not have a problem seeing other children. You all love children and are going to do great with them. One way around this, Dr. Cortez goes on, is by examining your own ancestry, which allows us to begin to understand and explore the difference between the diverse groups. And I think that's fine. And what happens, of course, is we do get away from our ancestry a little bit. But where we're headed here was something, in my opinion, is very divisive between groups of people and kids. I don't understand this. I'm a simple guy, but this is too hard for me. Taking a look at your own family history, you can begin to understand values, social practices, and traditions of your family as passed down from generations. And you all will be able to tell some of those. What internalized values really came from your childhood and the manner in which you are socialized. How much do you model after your parents and other relatives or friends? Okay, so she goes on to talk about that, and then she goes into practicing the discovery of your identity, that this is how you're going to help children. One activity that may help you in your journey is understand yourself, is to answer the question, who am I? It exhausts me. You may draw a picture of yourself and then on the back of the paper make a list of who you are, a list of points of yourself. I don't know, folks. You got to decide where you're at on this and how much about this comes with you. Here's what I want you to. Well, let me just pop back here in the notes and kind of go through what Sim talked about. This chapter 3, identity, culture, and diversity, and that's where we're at right now. And then we'll do some language, culture relevant pedagogy. And again, as you'll see, she really brings an agenda into these areas to me that is not necessary, and I'm going to advise you not to go along with Dr. Rojas Cortez on it. But here's those definitions of those three things. Identity is who we think we are and the groups we identify with, and culture is our values, beliefs, learned from family and community, and diversity is our various differences, like characteristics, values, and whether or not they're fixed or not. And here was that for the classroom. Examine your own cultural identity, identify different cultural and linguistic backgrounds represent your school, use a variety of children's literature that represents the children in the classroom, school, center, community. Some of this I think is excellent, and a lot of our schools now are doing a great job on this of the variety of different children's literature, and use real photographs of people in the community where your school center is located, and who would disagree with that. And then examine existing curriculum to see how children's cultural and linguistic background is represented. If it is not, discuss the provisions and act to make sure that occurs. And again, I'm not sure it's your job to start picking the curriculum apart. If you're part of a curriculum committee or something, it's something you keep in mind, but to me there's this agenda driven here that I'm not sure that this is where you want to go with this. So let me do this. I want you to stop right here now on this part here, and you push back against me or agree with me or give me your thoughts. Write me a paragraph here if I'm wrong on this, or if you agree with Dr. Rojas, or if you disagree with her. But give me some feedback right here on this whole thing of identity, culture, and diversity, and how important it is for you to be an activist for this in the classroom. So stop it and do this here, and then come back and join me. Thanks. So now we're going to go into language here. And Dr. Rojas Cortez tells us that it's crucial for success in the U.S., which I'm glad she at least will consent that's her consensus, that's important. And then it goes into this, how important this is. Okay. Why I'm questioning that is because, again, she's going to supersede parents. If parents aren't stressing this is important, why do we as teachers insist that they retain this native language? My ancestors didn't. Maybe your ancestors did and still speak the language that they spoke in the old country, but mine haven't retained this. And so I don't understand this approach here. And this goes into the thing about second languages here. And this is from second languages too. There's Cretan's classic monitor model. And I'll show you this in the textbook in a second. This is all has to do with language. Emphasis the natural order of language acquisition and the importance of giving the learner time and support to learn the new language. And that's huge. And I've worked with new people to this country on many occasions when I was taught in the middle school that had just arrived in this country and didn't have the language. And so very interesting here. In the periods of language, this BICS, I'll try and hit that in the textbook, and the CALP, the Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. So let's go back to the textbook here and talk about this culturally and linguistically diverse children. Many of the children in the United States are considered culturally and linguistically diverse, and there's no arguing with that. And you teach in a big school community, our big community school, you're going to find that. We have children who are biracial, bicultural, and bilingual, meaning that they are growing up in two worlds. Many of these children are minorities and are from traditionally underrepresented groups. Again, to me, underrepresentative is a divisive term, such as Mexican Americans and African Americans. Are you familiar with that? Okay, you stop it again here, and you go in the notes, and you tell me where this is underrepresented. I'm going to take you back here, and right here, you come in here and tell me what that underrepresented. Explain that to me. Right here, you tell me about this underrepresented group, what that means, and what Dr. Rojas Cortez is talking about in there. Okay. There are those who are multicultural because their families are so varied in their ancestry. Also representing the United States who are monolingual speakers of other languages, or what they know as English language learners, or ELLs. They're learning the English language. They only have one language. They're learning the English language. It's monolinguistics. Okay, and it gives you here's this table is population by race. Okay, Caucasian alone about 223 million out of a total of 301 million in our country. Then here's the breakdown of the other groups. Who are the English language learners? Well, in Table 3.2, which comes up, you'll see many of the different languages that are spoken in the U.S. homes, though the table does not indicate how many of those families do not speak English. Many of the households represented in the table are English language learners, or ELLs. The majority of the children who are ELL are Latino. So the biggest group of ELLs are Latino. That is Dr. Rojas Cortez's group, her descent. The second largest group are Asian descent. Now, this is interesting too, like this. The state of California has the largest number of ELLs, followed by Texas. Other states have also seen a growth in the number of children who are ELLs enrolled in their schools. Since the number of ELLs continues to increase, some school districts are realizing that effective programs and strategies to be implemented in order to meet the needs of these children. When school districts do not comply with meeting the needs of English language learners, then the Office of Civil Rights gets involved in order to provide basic rights to language minority learners. Okay, so it's the Office of Civil Rights, and folks, I put a link on the wiki site here to take you out there to this Office of Civil Rights. Okay, and look over this here, but it's again to me, and I'm crotchety and crabby now in my old age, but to me it's an agenda-driven thing here that she's referring you out here to this group. Okay, learning as a second language. Learning a second language, understanding how a second language is learned because importance not only of teachers but parents as well who want their children to quickly learn English at the expense of their native language. Now, folks, does she get to decide that? Does teacher decide that? She's saying that they often want their children to learn English at the expense of their native language. So again, she's superseding parents here, saying, no, 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 no. Parents don't decide that what language is more important. School will decide. Sorry, as a crabby old dad, that makes me angry. And she goes on here in the middle, says it's not that the parents want their children to lose their language, it's that they want their children to have better opportunities, and speaking English opens those doors, opportunities such as education and employment. Unfortunately, what happens to many children is that in an effort to learn English in their native language is lost. Language loss increases family challenges since parents cannot communicate with their children, which brings to issues of separation. Now, I'm telling you, even though she found some support for this Wong Fillmore in 2000, I'm saying parents make this call, not you as the teacher, not the school, and certainly not Dr. Rojas Cortez. Still, learning English language, I'm moving on right here on the bottom, is crucial for the success of any individual in the United States. Thus, it's important to understand how children develop a second language. Such strategies used by teachers are appropriate and effective. Yes. There are many theories of how children develop language, including behaviorists, natives, cognitives, all these things here. Okay, and that's all good. Okay, and she goes on to talk about it. Here's this Cretion's 5 hypotheses regarding that second language. And he's the guy, and I believe there's a question on the test about that, about him. Okay, another theory proposed by Cummins says there's these 2 time periods. The BICS is the stage children use language for social functions, to give for information, projects. And again, I'm going to say to you, there's a question on the test about these stages, so make sure you're familiar with those. Stages have become guidelines for teachers to understand the process of second language English, etc. Let me go back to the notes here. Well, let me finish this. Communicating with parents in second language learning. Talk to your child in native language. Sing songs in your native language. Tell your children traditional stories. I'm going to say to you too, there's a question on the test about this, about how to tips to explain how to support their children's language development. Now again, folks, Dr. Rojas Cortez here is assuming that the parents want their children to learn the native language instead of the new language, which is English. And if the parents aren't necessarily wanting that, she doesn't care. She said you need to give them this so that they can continue that native language. I don't know. I'm going to ask you in a second again to push back on that. All right. Well, let's do that right here. Let me come back to the notes and show you where to put that. Here's that second language, the 2 models that then what the Cretion's models and the Cummins, the 2 different things. Here's Cretion's. Here is those 2 periods. Okay, and then here's this parental support thing, other language. Okay, Before we get here, right after this right here, you again, whether how important is it to retain their native language, I'm pushing back against that and disagreeing with Dr. Cortez, Rojas Cortez. And right here, after this line here, you again push back at me, agree with her or disagree with her, but weigh in on this if you think I'm wrong or if you think I'm right. Either way, I'd like just to see. And all these opinions, you make them nice and red so I can't miss them, because I want to. I feel like I have this wrong, but I need somebody else to weigh in on this. Okay, stop it here and do this, and then come back and join me. Okay, thank you. This is the language learning programs that the text is going to describe on how to teach these different languages. So let me go back to the textbook here and show you these different things. Programs for English language. The research has shown that ELLs not only learn English but learn academic content are bilingual programs with English as second language. Things like two-way immersion or dual language programs. Two-way immersion or dual language programs seem to be getting more popular because of the inclusion of native language speakers as well as English speakers. And we have a new school in Sioux Falls as of 2 years ago that's a dual language school, that they teach the Spanish as well as English, and they teach classes in the Spanish, and that's called Rosa Parks Elementary as pilot school, and they're hiring more Spanish-speaking teachers, people that can speak Spanish. If you can speak a little Spanish, or if you're studying Spanish, it'd be a good place to get a job and work with this group here. Okay, and here's what was in the notes. This bilingual education program models goes on to say two-way immersion programs are beneficial for children. The children who are English speakers truly learn about their identity because they learn about the identity of others. Again, she does not bring any research into this. This is her opinion. Noteworthy is the fact many children and families have lost their native language because historically language minority groups such as Chicanos are prohibited from speaking their language. And I'm telling you, that is not why they have lost it. It goes on to say here they're harshly punished, but that's not true. They found incidences of that, but for the most part, parents coming to this country want their kids to speak English because they know how important it is to be successful. Dr. Rojas Cortez here is suggesting, then she found somebody that could support her on this approach, that they've lost their language because they'd be punished if they speak in it. Dual language or two-way immersion programs seem to assist children in developing both languages. The Center of Applied Linguistics is here. And then it goes on to talk about English as a second language. Schools that do not offer bilingual programs often offer some type of ESL program, such as ESL or English language pull-out, sheltered instruction, or something like that. It's important for teachers to understand the difference between bilingual programs and ESL programs, because one is an asset-based, meaning that the native language of the child is valued, while the other focuses on rushing children to learn English quickly. And again, she doesn't have any evidence of this. This is her opinion. The parents are the ones who decide if they want their children in a bilingual or ESL program. Therefore, it is imperative that the teachers assist parents in making informed decisions. See, the parents can't do it. Teacher, you have to assist them in making informed decisions. This constant implication, they're implying that parents aren't smart enough to figure this out. That teachers, you have to assist them in making informed decisions. Sorry, makes me crabby. Additionally, programs should value and build a cultural and linguistic capital of English language letters. This means that the children's native languages, as well as their cultural, need to be selected in order, or respected in order to let parents know how their children are valued. Okay, so here she goes on. Again, this is a little bit of a stretch, but I want you to see it. There are a few states that have banned bilingual education. Okay, and she lists them here. Thank you. California, Arizona, and Massachusetts, because they are under the belief that bilingual education does not promote acquisition of English. This is a misconception, though, as bilingual education promotes excellence and quality, allowing children to use their native language. Also this. Again, she has no evidence here. This is her opinion. Let me show you a couple states here, California and Arizona, that said before had the highest rates of ELL's programs. Why is that? They have the highest rate of immigration. They have some of the highest states with the highest rate of illegal immigrations. And so she is condemning them because of that. And what's happening, they've been so overrun with immigrants that, yes, that they have a hard time working. The children are all, not enough children in their schools that speak the language. But she finds it her job to criticize those states and how they've decided to run their state and their schools. Again, I could be wrong. My mind gets kind of clogged on this, but again, to me, she's a very she has an agenda here. Okay, she goes on, for very young children, bilingual education programs are crucial for their healthy development. Okay, again, show me that evidence that bilingual is crucial. She used the word crucial. And I'm saying to you, how in the world did you all succeed without that bilingual education? Crucial for their healthy development. When early childhood programs describe themselves as developmentally appropriate when they need to take in consideration the child's primary language. For example, Oneida Head Start programs decided to make changes in the curriculum to create strong foundation of the children's primary language. Again, not the parents, the state did. Government said, we will see, here's what we're going to do, to create a strong foundation of the children's primary language in order to help children succeed. Previously they had used English immersion, but the teachers and administrators realized that English was not helping. Okay. And so that was her thing. Be successful in school. The children's language increases relative, allowing them to use their native language. This is where those laws come from, is how are we going to get them in English if we're using native language to learn, to teach in school. I might have this wrong, but I have a hunch I don't. Okay. So, that's one. And this is more so driven that she's going to describe to you what is culturally relevant here. A theoretical model that not only addresses student achievement, but also helps students accept and affirm, sorry folks, but this just is unbelievable, accept and affirm their cultural identity while developing crucial perspectives that challenge inequities in the school. What? What? Now we're going to challenge and the inequities in the school? I want my elementary teachers of my children to go challenge the inequities in the school through these cultural identity things? Sorry, that's all I can say. Provides opportunities for enhanced learning, yes. Allows teachers to reflect on their practices and provide a curriculum that is relevant to all children. Again, I'm going to say to you, please follow the curriculum of the school. You want to be in some strange place to start correcting the curriculum yourself, away from the help of the school. Culturally relevant curriculum reflects children's experiences, identity, culture, and abilities in lessons. Yes, but you don't have to be an activist to do that. Okay, so let's go back to the textbook and see and delve into this a little farther, what's going on here. Again, she just came up with this, has truly changed the way, cultural relevant pedagogy has truly changed the way teachers work with students. It's defined as a theoretical model that not only addresses student achievement, but also helps students accept and affirm their cultural identity while developing cultural perspectives that challenge inequities in school. Okay, I whined about that. I'm about done with that one. Okay, come down here. A curriculum that is culturally relevant means that it reflects the children's experiences, identity, cultures, and abilities and lessons. Okay. Now, isn't this interesting also in a book about working with parents, is this thing about anti-bias. And let me take you over here where she says what an anti-bias curriculum looks like. It says it focuses on the power of cultural consciousness. Okay, again, folks, why do we have to deal with this as elementary and teachers to correct this ill? Anti-bias classroom appreciates children and their families. Okay, we can do that without that word. This is a divisive word. This is a word that we throw around that stops all conversations. The word bias, you throw the word bias into something and it immediately brings people to their knees and stops the conversation. She knows that as an activist, so she continually sticks this word in here to stop this conversation. Does any of you want to be called bias? No. So therefore, you immediately rush to this side of the room with Dr. Cortez here, Rojas Cortez, because you don't want to be called bias. And therefore, I'm going to ask you not to use that term or not to get in this conversation about what's bias and what's anti-bias. But a foundation of this is understanding how children develop their identity, perceive differences, and receive negative social messages. And again, what negative social messages? This is how they're going to perceive their identity is through your curriculum. So we're going to say that the social ills in our society is from the poor curriculum in school? I don't get it. So here's what you do if you don't want to have a biased, you want to have an anti-bias education. You shall demonstrate self-awareness, confidence, family pride, and positive social identities. Okay? She likes that term. Express comfort and joy with human diversity. Accurate language for human differences and deep, caring, or human connections. We don't need any of this conversation to have that. Increasingly recognize unfairness. Okay, again, here's a divisive term. Have language to describe unfairness and understand that what unfairness hurts. What? In our curriculums in school, we're going to talk about unfairness? And demonstrate empowerment, that the skills to act with others or alone against prejudice and or discriminatory actions. I'm sorry, folks. This is over the top. Let me take you back to the textbook. So here's where she goes off on this. Here's the goals I just showed you. Talks about here's the things that we're just going to use children's books to reflect difference in gender, race. Just had that in the notes. Okay. And then she goes into this, so what's good for parents in the community. Best regarded how to effectively communicate with culturally and linguistically diverse families, and I'm going to guess that means parents. Incorporate funds of knowledge, which we studied in the first chapter, and practice cultural relevant teachings. Thank goodness she doesn't try and tell us what those are. Foster effective communication, and extend and accept assistance. So, and I would say those are good points, but again, I don't understand what it has to do with this activist agenda to do those. Okay. And here she tells you how to incorporate those points that she just makes. Okay, at the end of the chapter also, would you please make a final statement about this, one way or another, and how this whole talk of diversity that Dr. Rojas Cortez has described will affect or not affect your teaching and your standing with parents and families? So this is the third place in the lecture that I've asked you to do that. So if you would do that, that would be great. Okay, Chapter 3, Cultural and Linguistic Families.